Well, hello. Would you explain some of the physics associated with grounding, the human body, not the wiring in a building, blah blah blah? Our viewers would benefit from understanding the implications of what grounding does and doesn't do. I'd also enjoy hearing your explanation of the potential dangers of grounding in certain circumstances, like severe thunderstorms with local ground spikes. All right, certainly. So, Earth's atmosphere possesses a very strong electric field. All right, it's roughly 100 volts per meter because the ground is negatively charged. The ionosphere at like 400 kilometers roughly is positively charged, and so there's an electric field between them. So if you're not grounded, if you're isolated, electrically insulated, I guess, from the ground, this means this electric field kind of polarizes you, if you wish. So your head would be kind of all the molecules in your body basically would be electrically polarized, right? So your feet would have different electric potential with respect to your head, and all the negative tails of polar molecules would be pointing upwards, and all the positive ends of the molecules would be pointing downwards. In addition to like free positive charges going downwards and free negative charges going upwards, which you might assume is not super healthy, all right? So when you're grounded, that is electrically connected to the earth, you would have the same electric potential as the earth, and therefore this would not happen, at least in theory. So this is the basic physics of what happens. However, some people that actually conducted studies on grounding, and there have been plenty recently, which I'm very glad about because I think this is a very important subject. So you can go to PubMed, for example, and look for grounding. Even though I would say be wary of certain papers look kind of suspicious, like this one, for example. Like I've skimmed it a little bit, and it doesn't look like a good paper, right? So who the hell writes the words "modern man" unironically in the abstract of the paper? And there are many more signs like this is not a good paper following. If you read it. However, there are a couple of good ones. For example, I could recommend this one, which has shown that the grounding reduces your cortisol levels. And in case you don't know, cortisol is the stress hormone, all right? And it's a pretty big thing, all right? Even though, again, I have to stress, no pun intended, that in order to gain the effect, you have to have a prolonged how would you say it, exposure, I guess, prolonged grounding. So you can't just walk barefoot for 10 minutes and be healed or something. You have to like what they usually do is you see grounded to earth during sleep. So it's at least a significant fraction of the day you are grounded, and usually again it's done when people are sleeping. So there's plenty of guides like how to make grounding mats on YouTube. Again, be very careful like where you plug your body into. Don't plug yourself into into the grid or else you might fry yourself. Plus, also, by the way, there is a negative side effect. I mean, since we're talking about grounding mats, because I've slept on a grounding mat for quite a while. So there is a side effect to having a grounding mat is that it is a huge antenna essentially. So any radio waves, any Wi-Fi, anything like that, it would induce currents in the grounding mat itself. So you would be receiving increased levels of radiation in of this type of radiation at the very least. So be careful about that as well. I mean, it wouldn't kill you, but it's not very healthy. So yeah. Uh, so yeah, they found that cortisol levels decrease, right? After the prolonged exposure, I guess is the word, to grounding, if you can phrase it like this. But yeah, so it's a pretty big deal, right? But obviously, we're not dealing with physics here anymore. It's kind of like a more, I don't know, biochemistry or something like that. And how does it exactly happen? I actually don't know. Like, why would the cortisol levels decrease because of grounding? However, this paper, which I would highly recommend, I think everyone needs to read this, again, found just on the first page of grounding search on PubMed, this one, literally the third, all right? So what does it say? It has a hypothesis. Let me try to find it. Um, so basically, what they found is that the inflammation is severely reduced, and their hypothesis is that what happens is, since like the Earth is negatively charged, it's basically a source of electrons, right? And so what they say is that we need those free electrons, kind of, you know. And why do we need them? Well, uh, again, my hypothesis, I'm not sure they mentioned this explicitly, I don't quite remember, but my hypothesis is that our atmosphere, well, this they actually say is that our atmosphere is full of so-called ROS, not necessarily the atmosphere, but they end up in our bodies, all right? Again, I'm not a chemist, I'm not a biologist, so ROS is reactive oxygen species, and RNS are reactive nitrogen species. So what they are very reactive molecules, compounds of oxygen and nitrogen, free radicals. Maybe you've heard this term, right? And we need antioxidants to combat this, right? What are the antioxidants? They basically provide. So once again, like what do these ROS do? Is I'm sorry, side unwanted side reactions resulting in cell damage. Basically, that's what ROS and RNS do, right? And we need electrons to combat this. And like the authors argue that we've had these electrons when we were, you know, in a sort of like a pre-industrial state, when we were barefoot a lot of the time, maybe not most of the time, but at least a lot of the time. And so these electrons basically they provide electrons for ROS and RNS to feed upon, so they don't touch your cells, right? So the electrons kind of neutralize the ROS and RNS, and you need the source of electrons to constantly provide this. Like if you think about it, oxygen is kind of a poison for us. Like of course we use it to breathe and get energy, but it also kind of kills us slowly. And in order to counteract this, you need some negative charge in you. And the authors argue the Earth, and I mean they are correct, the Earth provides this negative charge in whatever quantity we want, basically. So we need to stay grounded in order for these ROSs and RNSs not to kill us. And this reduces inflammation because oxygen doesn't eat your cells alive. It rather just takes the electrons and goes away, so to speak. I mean, I'm just kind of, you know, speaking in very plain terms. So antioxidants are electron donors, and the best electron donor is the surface of the Earth. And this might be also why the cortisol metabolism changes. Because again, cortisol is the stress hormone, and when your cells are constantly being attacked by poisonous oxygen, let's put it just simply, well, obviously your cortisol levels would increase and you would be in constant inflammatory state, right? So yeah, once again, I highly recommend reading this paper. And this hypothesis actually I think it makes sense, all right. And if you think about it in engineering terms, so what grounding provides is sort of a cathodic protection, right? In case you haven't heard about it, well, learn about it. So that's what people use to protect metallic structures from corrosion, right? Which is kind of the same thing that happens in the human body when oxygen attacks it. So you have a thing that you need to protect, and you just pump electrons into it. So when the oxygen wants to oxidize your thing, it instead just takes the electrons and walks away, so to speak, right? And this is essentially what grounding does to your body, at least what I think it does to your body. So yeah, this is the gist of it. Potential dangers, yeah, don't I don't think sleeping on a grounding mat, like aside from what I've already said, that you're like if you're making a grounding mat, you're making a huge antenna, which is not super cool. Like it just amplifies any noise, any radio noise that's around you, or microwave noise for that matter as well. Be wary that if you have like metallic rods inserted into the ground in your house, let's say, and you connect them to your grounding mat, like if lightning strikes nearby, like it's not very safe. Let's just put it this way. So be very careful with all of this. That's what I'm saying. But if you can derive a good setup, like if you live on the first floor and you have access to actual ground, like read up how to make a grounding, make a proper grounding, like a couple of metallic rods buried like half a meter beneath the soil, something like that. Well, I mean, just find the info if you wish, and read this paper. This one, it's very good, and I think their hypothesis is sound. Hopefully, this helps.